So we're going to bring on our next guest, and he has a lot of he's a historical fiction writer, but he also has some other accolades that he has under his belt or whatever, including being an ordained minister, Baptist minister.
Wow, okay.
He's an Air Force veteran, Rhonda. Uh, another military veteran, and he's a retired public school educator and an owner of Mincy Publishing, the LLC. So
It sounds like he's a multi-hyphenate, as they call it.
yes, multi-talented. Lots of things happen to you in your career, and you are you new to doing historical fiction or novels? Is this a new, like your next venture? And oh, let me
Right.
say, this is AJ Sam that we're welcoming to the show.
Hello,
Welcome.
everybody. How you doing?
Hi.
Yeah.
Wonderful to see you. Thank you for being here tonight.
Oh, but thank you very much. I'm honored. I really am. And first, if I could just say one thing, because um, I want to say how much I appreciate the service to our race that you two do. In preparing for this interview, I've watched 8 to 10 of your shows, 16 to 20 hours of it. I was trying to
Wow.
get a feel for the interview format and what people were saying, what questions you were asking, but I got humbled. I really did. I got humbled at being part of this glorious endeavor that you're doing, and you're documenting the story of us in a way that can't be whitewashed. And so I just want to thank both of you for that.
Well,
Oh, well, and
I'm
thank
glad to
you for
say
watching
that
those
I'm glad.
hours of the show.
Mhm.
Yeah, and no,
They
I'm
were
glad
very
that you
enlightening.
said that because this show is very intentional about highlighting Black authors.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not saying that we have not had non-Black authors on the show before, but as Gwen says, if we have a non-Black author on the show, it's because they're highlighting Black people and Black culture in such a
Mm-hmm.
way that it deserves a platform. But this show is for Black authors and by Black authors, and it's something that we take pride in. So I'm very glad that you recognized that when you were
Yes,
watching the show.
yes, I did. I did.
Thank you for spending all that time watching. One thing we try to do is make every guest feel special and individual, and we have a
Yeah.
conversation with our guests.
I
So
know.
sometimes people will ask us in advance, like they'll send the email, can I have the questions in advance? And I tell them we never have questions in advance.
Yeah, we don't have questions in
We
advance.
don't.
This is a conversation. We vibe for 30 minutes. That's what we
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
do.
Yes, and I was one of those people who asked you, could I have the questions in advance? So
I
yes, I did.
didn't realize that because people often do it. So
Yeah, yeah,
I didn't
yeah.
connect it with you necessarily at all. But it's and I tell people there's no pressure because
Right.
it's a conversation.
Yes, it
So
is. And I'm as a former teacher, teaching in front of fifth graders, as a preacher of the word of God. I speak in front of people all the time, but this is different. But I'm excited. So
We're
okay.
very excited to have you.
thank you.
Yeah, now you spent some time in the Air Force as a
Right.
veteran.
Uh-huh.
How long were
Yes.
you in the Air Force?
I was there in the Air Force for 4 years, 6 months, and 29 days.
Okay.
40 years?
Did you say
Four,
four?
four
Oh,
years, four
okay.
years,
Oh, I thought
four
you said
years, 6
40.
months, and 29 days.
Oh, well, see, I was in the Army for 23 years.
Wow. I couldn't last past the 4 years.
As a
No,
boy, you were counting the day. When you give a
I
day
was counting
count,
the day
that
exactly.
means
I was counting it.
Yeah,
Not
you
only
can
was
tell he was
not only
counting the
was I
days.
counting the days, but I think my commanding officer was counting the days. Yeah. So yeah. I mean, I got a lot. I got a lot of positive from it. I got structure. I got self-discipline. So there was a lot of it, but there was a lot of stuff that had to be chipped off of me, let's say. And I got out before I got in trouble. So
There
I'm
you
glad.
go.
I'm glad at the time. I spent time in Japan. I spent time in my first base was in Las Vegas, at Nellis. And so two two very eventful places that I would have never went on my own. But Vegas, I would have made it there, but not Japan. So I was able to travel.
Okay. Yeah, a lot of people say that about being in the service. And Rhonda has been all over. She's been
Hmm.
all over.
Yeah, I
And
know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my last duty station was Belgium, actually.
Uh-huh. Didn't you go down to see an author that was somewhere south of Belgium?
Oh yeah, you're talking like last week. We were
Victoria
talking
last week.
about
Yeah,
how
yeah,
I was
yeah.
stationed in Belgium and I
Uh-huh.
drove to Germany to see
The
Victoria
Germany.
Christopher Murray.
Yeah, yeah. I wasn't sure when because I've seen so many of your videos, so I wasn't sure which one, but I did remember that.
Yeah, that was in Germany. I was living in Belgium, and I think she contacted me on social media, or she mentioned on social media that she would be going to Germany. And I was like,
Hmm.
oh, that's only 3 hours away. So I drove over to Germany so I could support her doing her speaking engagement.
Right, right. Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, you really were watching.
I was really watching. I was
Yeah, well, he
watching. I
said
was
16 hours or something like that. Or I don't know. That's a lot of episodes. But, we've done over 200 shows.
wow.
We've interviewed over 750 people. And we will celebrate our fifth anniversary next month.
Okay. Well, you have gotten a committed regular viewer from now on. I
Okay.
mean,
Well,
no, I love the format and I've learned so much. I've learned so much, and you got different people from different genres, but they all have something to add to me as a historical fiction writer. So I'm just loving it.
Love
yeah.
it.
Yeah, everybody has a different story,
Yes,
even if it's fiction,
yes.
you know,
Hmm.
and they have a different story to tell about themselves, about their journey. Nobody has the same story. So,
Hmm.
all of us are individuals, and so we all have started at different places and followed different paths and ended up different places and
Yeah.
and going different places. So, um, you write historical fiction. Now, what got you on that path?
Uh, well, I was in the engineering and computer field. I got out of the Air Force, worked there for 10, 15 years and uh, started strengthening my faith back in God. And he led me to go back to school to become a teacher. So I went to the USF campus, Tampa USF campus, University of South Florida campus, and joined a group of men who were going there to make a difference in classrooms.
Mm-hmm.
And one of our classes, our reading instruction class, the professor assigned us to write a story to take us through the process of writing so that when we taught our children how to write, we could go back on our experiences. So, like I was prone to do, I got up early one day by 7 o'clock, got to a computer and jotted down a story, probably 3 pages, 30 minutes, and I had it ready for an 8:30 a.m. class. Handed it in. A couple of days later, I got it back. I got an A. I was happy. But but the class, well, the teacher, the professor was looking at me and I'm like, okay, what's up? And she said, did you write this story? And first I said, well, she kind of accused me of cheating, but then her body language was saying no. And I said, yeah. And she said, it's incredible. And she read it to the class.
Oh, okay.
And the class was silent. And I'm looking like, I thought it was an A paper, but I didn't expect all of this. And so she kind of counseled me. She said, this is the kind of story people are, people will be interested in hearing about. And it was a short story. African American slave was rescued by Harriet Tubman on the road for 3 days, and they make it up north. That was my 3-page, 300-word story.
Oh, you said all that in 300 words. Okay.
Oh yeah, it was quick. I was telling a lot. I wasn't showing much. I was telling a lot. Like
Mm-hmm.
somebody was talking about the novellas. Um, so fast forward about 7 years later, I'm now a full-fledged teacher, and working in Pinellas County, Florida. St. Petersburg, which is where I'm from originally. And the school board had this magazine they printed out every year, and they invited teachers to submit articles to be published. I submitted them 3 years in a row. 3 years in a row, they accepted my article. And I'm like, wow, wait a minute, this is pretty good. And but the clincher was about a month after my third submission, I got an email from the Department of Reading and Instruction. And she asked me to would I consider teaching at a summer camp of
Nice.
of of high functioning writers, fifth grade writers, fifth, sixth grade writers. And it was sponsored by this company called the Pointer Institute, which is the parent
Yeah.
company of the
The
parent
Pointer
company of
Institute is huge.
hmm?
I said the Pointer Institute is huge. They're all about writing. They're like the
Uh-huh.
guru when it comes to writing.
And they're the parent company of the St. Petersburg Times newspaper. So I
Wow.
did a couple of years there again, still writing, still getting accolades from people that I respect as writers. And I said, you know what? I may be able to get me a couple of dollars here part time doing this. So this is 7 years later. So I picked back up my story and I started working on it. Started feverishly working on it. Um, and about 4 years later, I thought it was ready for publication. I laugh now because it was nowhere near ready for
I like.
publication.
I knew that's where you were going with it
You
when you
thought it
said
was
you
ready.
thought it was ready.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was, yeah. And uh, but the thing about it was that the framework for the series was established. And so after several, um, I don't know, I think most of you, I mean both of you've been writing long enough to remember the self-addressed stamped envelopes
Yeah.
that you
Yeah,
sent to publishers, and you had to
yeah,
wait 6 weeks. And
yeah.
then I got excited with emails, but that just make the rejection come faster, you know?
I never submitted
You
my
know,
work
I'm
to a
serious. It's
publisher,
instead
but
of
I
six
used
weeks,
them for
it's like two
other
days,
things.
and no
Yeah.
thanks, no
Well, at
no
least they
explanation.
answered. At least they said something. They don't
Right.
always say
They don't
anything. They
always
just
answer.
You don't always
no.
say
They just
anything.
say
Yeah.
nothing. You
Uh,
don't hear anything,
mhm.
so you just
But
figure it's a no.
I think my time with the Pointer Institute and working with that, I started going around to certain like somebody have a writer's workshop. I go because I realized that if I was going to have success, I needed to get better at my craft. And so I did that. And I mean, I'm looking at some magazines I used to get. I'm hesitant about advertising the magazine because I would like for them to come to me and pay me to advertise their magazine. So I won't say, but it was some national magazines that again had great articles that helped me as a writer, to help me on this journey. And so I kept going. I didn't stop. Um, Google Google became my best friend. I kid people. I said I remember Google when it was Giggle, and I was in the library so much trying to gather information, historical fiction writing. And Google cut my research time down so much that I still researched the same amount of time, but I
Mm-hmm.
was able to research so many more things.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of where I am right now. Um, and it happened, like I said, the framework was established. I have now 3 books in a series I plan on writing. The first one was published March 2023. The second one, I tell people it's in the oven and I can smell the aroma of it baking. It's actually that close to being ready. I thought I was going to be on your show the end of June. I'm like, okay, yeah, it'll be ready by then, fresh. But you called me, I came, and so here I am.
So now, when is the book actually going to be out? Because I see it's going to be available June
Says June.
2025, which is this month.
Right, right, which is now. So yes, like
Right.
like I said, I've been cooking lately, and I remember I know now when the scent. I'm upstairs in our house, and when the scent arrives upstairs, the dinner is ready. So I'm
Right.
already smelling the scent. I'm thinking it will be published end of this month.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Well, tell us about the story.
Yeah, well,
Okay,
tell us the first one first, which is the journey far.
okay. Well, a journey for Ibire, and in each one of these four stories have as a subtitle um, a Yoruba word or term. And I don't know, I'm not quite sure if I'm pronouncing that right. Um, I researched the word Y O U Yoruba, and most people pronounce it Yoruba. But I remember an interview with Chadwick Boseman, and he pronounced it Yoruba. So I'm not quite sure which one. There's accents, there's
Right.
slangs, that kind of thing. So either way, but each one of my books has a Yoruba subtitle, and Abiri stands for beginnings, which is the first book. It chronicles the life of a young man, an African American man, from about 6 years old to about 18 years old. He's sold into slavery, taken away from his parents, sold into slavery, and he spends the first, I guess, the next 3, 4, 5 years in isolation in the big house. The master bought him as a friend, pet, plaything for his son. He eventually gets sent out of the big house into the fields with the other slaves. Gets introduced to the full brutality of slavery. Um, Ends up escaping with the help of Harriet Tubman. So then it comes back to that
Okay.
original kernel that I
Story that
started
you
with.
did. Mm-hmm.
He ends up in 1859 New York City, and he gets the help of an abolitionist, Mrs. Howard, a French immigrant who helped. She's the abolitionist. She helps runaway slaves. And the story ends with the attack on Fort Sumter, South Carolina, by the Confederates. That's how a Journey Far ends.
Okay.
Hmm. Well, I want to ask you this. There are a number of slave stories that have been not just published but also filmed in the
Hmm.
last few years. And
Yeah.
for especially young people will say, well, we're tired of hearing slave stories and we want to hear other stories.
Hmm.
What do you tell them? Because this sounds like a beautiful story, but in essence, it is somewhat of a slave story. So what do you tell them
Mm.
when you hear this type of pushback, especially from
Uh-huh.
younger people?
Younger people, and I agree. You probably get it. I do Facebook posts, and every now and then I get a post from somebody that says slavery is over, and I tend to answer them, and I'll tell them things like, if you think slavery is over, you need to read more carefully.
Mm,
And that's all I'll say. I'm not going to argue anything like that. This story is American history. We talk a lot about, and you can see where Black History Matters 24/7, 365, but it's American history. It's our history, and it's not just the person being um, subjugated. It's about the whole. I don't know how to put it. The whole environment that supports it.
right.
Um, one of your authors, the young lady that did the historical fiction from South Africa, and how entrenched apartheid and that government
Oh
was.
yes, yes.
Mm,
Boy,
Yes. Mhm.
that was powerful, and it just reminded me some things. Now you're going to learn some different things, though. You're going to learn some slants because it's not your typical slavery story. James ends up being a college graduate, civil engineer. He learns about Abraham Lincoln. And again, this research that I did, I grew, and I think as authors, we can always say this: we grow through our books. Especially
Yes.
historical fiction, where we got to do the research, we got to flesh out the truth, and we got to figure out what's relevant, what's not relevant. And
Right.
so with this story, it is again, no doubt there's some harsh parts, but that was the United States in the 1850s. It was
That was
harsh.
life. Yeah.
It was
Well,
harsh
and
with
and
African Americans,
for
huh?
hundreds, well, for 200 years before that.
Well, yeah, for 20 years
Mm,
before that.
yeah.
And
Mhm.
but yeah, so I would tell them that, and I would tell them to be careful to look at the story, because there's things that I learned that I had no idea about. I mean, I really didn't. And I thought I knew. I mean, I wasn't a Civil War scholar, no, but I thought that what I would put in my book would be things that people would already know happened.
Right.
And I don't think they know some of the things I put in my book because I had to. I mean, I didn't believe it.
Well, I was talking about this last night. Is sometimes I think we have a little bit of imposter syndrome because we think just because we know it that everybody knows it.
Hmm.
And sometimes we can trick ourselves into thinking that we don't have any new knowledge to add to the pool
Very,
of
very,
knowledge.
yes, yes. And this
And
new knowledge, yeah. I'm
and
sorry,
you
go ahead.
yeah, by you sharing these stories, you're adding to that pool of knowledge. You're pouring into that pool of knowledge. And there might be somebody who reads your book who already knew this, but I bet you there are even more people who are going to be reading your book and they've never heard this information before. And it's going to inspire them to do their own research.
Hmm. Um, if I can, Abraham Lincoln, 60th President of the United States, um, Lincoln Memorial. I sat down when I went to DC. I sat down at his feet. Freed the slave, assassinated, and my character, my protagonist, James, like I say, he's escaped. He's in New York. He's enthralled with Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass, and he's putting Abraham Lincoln on the same pedestal as them. And so I'm doing research. I want to stop doing all my tale and do more shows. I said, I need to find some document that's going to really pull this together. So I said, I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna put parts of Lincoln's inaugural address in my story.
Mm.
And that way, the people reading it would be energized. The abolitionists in the story would be cheering. James would be doing backflips. And so I believe the first one I went to was Smithsonianinstitution.org, pulled up his inauguration speech from March 4th, 1861. And I read it and I said, man, I must be more tired than I thought I am because this isn't making any sense. I'm serious. I went to bed. I was teaching, so had a full day with my little darlings, full week with my darlings. So I get up that Saturday morning, the next day, got me a cup of coffee, and I start researching again. And I mean, I went to SmithsonianInstitute.com. I went to HistoryChannel.com. I went to the Library of Congress. I went to all these reputable websites, at least 8 of them, and they all said the same thing. You know, I think I might have even went to Billy Bob and Josephus.org. I'm not sure. But I'm reading this. Yeah, I'm
Not
reading
Billy
this
Bob
and
and
I'm
Josephus.
and I'm like, so if you don't mind, can I read Lincoln's the first, just the opening paragraph of it, and you'll see why the trajectory of my story took took a big turn. Can I
Well,
Okay,
you
do
got
that?
5 minutes.
you do.
5 minutes?
And is
Okay.
this the
All right.
Gettysburg
Okay.
Address or is this different?
Huh?
Is this the Gettysburg Address or is
No,
this?
no, oh, no,
No.
no,
Okay.
no.
Okay.
Yeah. So he
Okay.
says apprehension seems to exist among people in the southern states that by the accession of a Republican administration, their property and their peace and their personal security are to be in danger. And I said, property? That's what the southern people consider slaves.
Yes.
So President Abraham Lincoln, in his first address to the nation as president, said that he wasn't going to bother with their property. At the end, he says, I believe I have no lawful right to do so and have no inclination to do so. So this is the president that's on the penny, the $5 bill, the
Mm-hmm.
streets all over America and black communities that are named Lincoln.
Mm-hmm.
And so it changed the whole trajectory of my story, and it changed my protagonist's view of him. So the whole story changed. And that's what I mean about, about Lincoln and what he did, but this political journey that he had to go on makes him suspect,
Well,
So
he started
yeah.
at one place and he ended up in another place. But where he started was the political thing at the time that he had to do to, I guess, try to make bring everybody together, which it still didn't. But
Well, yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, yeah,
I'm just being a pragmatist about it,
yeah,
not
and and
you know.
and I'm careful not to interject me too much into it,
Mm-hmm,
because I want people to have a conversation.
yeah.
Well, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? So anyway, that's
Mm-hmm.
that's it.
And
Like I said,
that's good. And people don't hear that much about the inauguration. That's why I asked you, was it the Gettysburg Address? Because that's the address from Lincoln that everybody knows, the four
uh-huh.
score and 7 years
Hmm.
ago.
Yes.
So you don't even hear any reference to the inaugural
No, you
address.
don't. And I
Now
think this is why.
you have 1 minute to talk
Okay,
about
one
your
minute.
other new book. Your new
So
book
occurring,
that's coming out.
again, occurring is Yoruba for a man, and it
Okay.
starts 3 days after the attack on Fort Sumter, South Carolina. So in the timeline,
Okay.
it's 3 days after A Journey Far ends, and it goes through how long African American men had to wait to fight for the country. 780 days
Mm.
after the attack on Fort Sumter, did Lincoln finally allow them to enlist in the Army and Navy to fight in the war.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's there's a lot of history there. And just referring back to something that you said at the beginning, where and you and Ronald were referring to about we want to hear more, you know, than just about slaves. You
Right.
have to also look at it like this. That was a long time period in American history.
It was.
Mm-hmm.
It
And
was.
if you compare it to the westerns, like nobody says we're tired of West books about the cowboys and westerns and all that. That was a much shorter period of time, but
Mm-hmm.
they've made a gazillion stories and movies and books about
Mm-hmm.
that, the old West and when they were uh, foraging from, you know, whatever they did to discover new lands and build. And when they did the gold rush and all of that in California and built the
Mm-hmm.
railroad, that was a relatively short period of time. And
Yeah.
there's been a gazillion books and movies and series, and still making movies and books and series about that
Yes,
period.
you are
So
so
the
right.
slavery period was much, much longer, 250 years. So there's a lot of stories that can be told about.
And there are a lot of
I
stories that
think
haven't
so.
been told yet.
Yes.
I haven't
Yes.
been told yet, and I would like to think that mine is one of them, and we'll see. But I thank you for your time. I thank you for the opportunity, and I just
Okay.
want to ask you just to continue the great work you two are doing, because it's definitely a service, and we need to have our stories told. I mean, I know I'm preaching to the choir, as they say, but we need to have our stories told, and you do a fantastic job of that. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Well,
so
thank
much. We
you.
appreciate that.
Now
And
tell people
sometimes
where
it's
you
just good
can.
to have that.
It is. It's good to have the encouragement and just reinforcement.
Oh yeah.
I mean, we believe in what we're doing, and we try to
Uh-huh.
keep
There you
it
go.
totally professional all the time. Um, so that's one of the watchwords we have for this
Hmm.
show. It will always be professional,
Hmm.
and we always will be respectful of our guests.
Right.
Um, so where can people get your books?
On Amazon. They're on Amazon.
Okay.
Um, Again, the Journey Bar, and then my the second one, God's Direction in Your Life, recognizing that's a spiritual journal,
Okay.
And because I am a pastor. I mean, I'm a preacher, so I'll
Mm.
be doing another one of those. But again, I have these two books, A Journey Far and Occurring. Occurring will be on Amazon when it's published, and
Okay.
I have it in paperback, ebook, and audiobook form.
Okay.
And then obviously the God's Direction, that's a journal, will be only in paperback form. And then
Okay.
then the QR code goes to my Linktree account,
Okay.
which
On
lists
the
all of my social media sites, my website, that kind of thing.
Okay. So the QR code, you can find everything about AJ Sam, and we really appreciate you being on the show.
But thank you very much for having me.
Have a
Okay. Have a
great
great
night.
night.
Thank you so much.
Okay, all right.